a brand new week and a new page in your story, so let's make it a great one today. This is M Live. We have a lot to look at and review and discuss. Today we'll be analyzing the move by Kenya to send its soldiers to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo as part of a regional military operation targeting rebels in that conflict-torn region. Well, the first batch of soldiers arrived on Saturday. That's what we'll be discussing. But also in the dailies, it appears a lot is happening in the national politics. We'll be also analyzing that. My name is Zainab Ismail, and you can engage on us on our social media platforms at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. The hashtag, as always, is MLiveNTV. But first, we begin with some of these stories forming the basis of our conversation around the nation. Well, President William Ruto says he will use all the state machinery at his disposal to put an end to cattle rustling and banditry in the infamous Kerio Valley. Speaking after a church service in Kabarnet in the county of Baringo, the head of state vowed to flush out bandits who are responsible for maiming and killing innocent Kenyans. And TV's Kevin Mutai has more.
Back to one of his key political strongholds for the first time since being elected into office, President William Ruto encountered concerns over runaway insecurity in the region. The head of state once more making lofty promises to end banditry.
Wakora bado wako, lakini wameama wanakaa kwa hiyo milima ya Arab. Alikuwa najua vizuri sana. Na nashukuru, najua leo utatusaidia kidogo ya NPRs. Nilikuwa nimeomba 300, lakini najua wewe unaye mpangilio mzuri.
Watu wa jeuri, watu ambaye ni wako na kiburi mingi, watu ambao ni wakora. Mimi nataka niwahakikishie hawa watu wachache hatuwezi kuwakubalia waharibu amani ya wananchi wa taifa letu la Kenya.
Some political leaders in the area have been accused of funding the mayhem for political gains, with President warning that there will be repercussions for anyone aiding terror against the people. Schools have been closed, women and children suffering as hundreds of people end up being displaced for fear of being attacked by bandits. President Ruto now states that the government will deploy adequate resources to neutralize the bandits and their networks.
Mheshimiwa Rais, watu wanajaribu kurudi nyumbani. Mtu anapoenda kuelekea nyumbani anakutana na ng'ombe yake iliibiwa wakati alikuwa anafukuzwa. Huyo ni mtu, hiyo ng'ombe sio yake tena. Bali hiyo ng'ombe inafanyishwa malisho ni kwake, lakini hawezi enda nyumbani.
Kilichoko na mwanzo lazima iwe na mwisho. We have faith and we trust the living God, Your Excellency, that you have been sent to lead this country so that you become the permanent solution ya shida yetu ya usalama.
Wananchi wazuri wenye wanapenda amani, hawa watu tunawapenda na tutafanya kazi na wao. Wale wachache wanasumbua nyinyi na kusumbua sisi, hawa wachia mimi. Hawa lazima tuwanyoroshe ndio wawache kulete fujo.
Calls by a section of leaders to withdraw forces from major towns in the region were met with conditions from the executive.
Naomba tu kwa heshima na unyenyekevu waondolewe kwa barabara, waingie huko ndani, watusaidiane kwa disarmament. Na behind you 100%.
Njia ya kutoa hao askari, mheshimiwa, muongee kama viongozi, warudishe bunduki, askari waondoke. Lakini kwa sababu mimi ni Mkristo, nasema ukweli, ni kuambie mchana rais wangu akiwa hapa, kabla bunduki hasijarudi hakuna askari tutaondoa. Haiwezekani.
Vile nilisema, it is not if, it is when they will stop. They must. Kwa sababu there are no two ways about it.
The government is set to distribute relief food to those affected by banditry and drought across the region. Kevin Mutai, NTV.
Well, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is not about to keep former President Uhuru Kenyatta's name and his administration out of his mouth. Gachagua again fired salvos at the former regime yesterday, insisting he's only telling the truth. And TV senior political affairs reporter Kennedy Mreithi has more on that story.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is a man on a political warpath, and former President Uhuru Kenyatta and his administration seems to be the key target. If it is not the numerous run-ins he had with the law during the previous regime, it is the dilapidated state he says they found the country in. The deputy president now wants Kenyans to let him be, insisting he will not stop talking about what he calls the truth.
Mheshimiwa Rais, leo nimeona gazeti moja wakinikachifu ati niwache kuongea ukweli, ati nisiambie wa Kenya umekuta Kenya imeisha na haina chochote. Mnataka niendelee ama niwache? Si lazima tuseme ukweli. Tumekuta store hakuna kitu, hata panya wametoroka, hakuna kitu ya kukula. Sasa tukisema hiyo wanasema hapana, nyinyi endeleeni kufanya kazi, msituambie vile mumekuta. Lazima tuseme.
It all started at the Kasarani Stadium at his and President William Ruto swearing-in ceremony, where he tore into President Kenyatta in front of dignitaries.
Kenya is now a democratic country. You don't have to look back when you do something. All Kenyans are free to associate with whoever they want. It became a crime in this country to be afraid of William Ruto. It is only that it was not put in the penal code.
2 months into the new administration and countless speeches later, DP Gachagua is still on Kenyatta's case.
Wale ambaye walitufunga, wale ambaye walituwekelea mashtaka ya uongo, tumewasamehea. Hata yule alituma hawa kutushika, kutufunga, kututoa nguo mbele ya watoto, tumemsamehea. Kwa sababu tunataka hii Kenya yetu isonge mbele.
Gachagua says it is in his nature to speak his mind, especially now that he associates the Kenyatta administration with humiliation towards himself, his family and the Kenya Kwanza Brigade.
Juzi nimemuuliza rais, wewe vile uliumia, nimepata uliumia, kwa nini huko unatuambia? Akasema kama ningemwambia nyinyi mungenitoroka. Mungejua shida ni mingi, muniwache. Hata mimi yengine nilipitia ndio saa hii inaanza kutokea. Nilikuwa naumia tu najikaza kiume na kuva tu kiofisa.
On the other hand, President William Ruto seems to have adopted a more reconciliatory tone. And is it by design?
We decided as a nation that henceforth we are going to prosecute our politics not on the basis of ethnicity, but on the basis of issues and matters that are relevant to the people of Kenya.
The country's second in command now seems to have taken over the political portfolio of their government from the president, who now seems to have changed his communication style and adopted a more stately one. Kennedy Muredhi, NTV.
All right. Now, the city of Nairobi has seen an upsurge in criminal activity perpetrated by gun and knife-toting gangs. Nairobians are blaming the police for the rise in crime, citing laxity from law enforcement agencies. Well, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has vowed to engage the police and deal decisively with the criminals. Sidi Chazima now reports.
Criminal gangs would ordinarily use the cover of darkness to terrorize innocent civilians. However, now the thugs have turned the city into a playground in broad daylight, carrying out deadly muggings punctuated with gun threats and knife stabbings. Nairobi residents are a worried lot.
Sahi Nairobi hatuko safe. Hata vile sahi nimekuja kutembea na hao watu wangu hivi. Hauko comfortable, unakaa tu kificha simu.
These criminal elements appear to have mapped out a target for their atrocities.
Because hii stories za mugging sana madem wanakuwa target sana.
Nimeona most target ni ukiwa lona, alafu ukiwa pengine dem wana assume ni weak, ama ukiwa boy na uko peke yako pengine unakaa nyonge wana assume uko weak. But that's not the case always. Ukiwa rende wana avoid pack as much as possible.
It has not escaped the attention of newly appointed Inspector General of Police Japheth Koome, who last week was breathing fire, promising to rein in on the gangs.
Mkora ambaye anafikiria atatembea na kisu huko nje, anadunga mwananchi na kisu kwa kisu. Mkora ako na bunduki, utafanya mwananchi mtukufu aumie. That will not happen.
Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has also fired a warning.
Tafadhali wachanini na hiyo mambo ya kupiga watu ngeta, kudunga watu visu, wachanini na hiyo, mtaumia. We are very serious. There must be order in Nairobi. Debate on whether current changes in the police service could have occasioned an upsurge in the cases rages on.
DCI may change, IG may change. Siwezi jua vile pengine bado wako structuring. Lakini anyway, mimi naomba warudi, but kwa saizi haonekani.
Instead of criminalizing those guys, I saw them being paraded, is wrong. I'm saying as an outsider. This is as an insider. Those guys who are doing, they don't do anything, because criminals are going to rule Kenya. Today, there is no single policeman who will find you being mugged here and he has got a firearm and even intervene. We have reduced our policemen to nothing.
Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has outlined the role the county government will play.
Ile pande ya county government tutafanya yetu, kuweka mataa, kuhakikisha tumemulika kila mahali, polisi tumekubaliana nao vile watachunga raia, ukipatikana usikuje kutulilia.
So tao usitembee peke yako kitu ya kwanza, alafu avoid kutembea areas zenye unajua si safe.
Sydney Chazima, NTV.
Now, the National Treasury has written to all ministries informing them of new guidelines aimed at revising expenditure and revenue estimates for the 2022-2023 financial year. In a circular seen by NTV, Treasury has directed that all externally funded projects whose budgetary absorption is between 60% and 65% be scaled down. And also, Treasury has directed that there shall be no financing of any new development projects, and any foreign travel budget that had not been utilized as at the 30th of September this year, that is by the end of the first quarter of the current financial year, has now been suspended. And Garissa Governor Nadhif Jama has cracked the whip on the so-called ghost workers at the county government. A human resource audit has revealed that 3,500 county staff in the county of Garissa were hired illegally. NTV's Yusuf Mahad Abdi has more details from Garissa.
Garissa Governor Nadhif Jama has been on the spot in recent weeks over reported mass firing.
Karibuni sana.
The governor has defended his move, saying that after 2 months of conducting a human resource audit in the county, it was realized that at least 3,500 county staffs were hired illegally without going through due process.
Where you find 3,500 or close to that, with no any request by any department, with no any budget, with no any request to the board, with no any advert by the board, with no any short listing, and with no any appointment, no documents in the files, then, and the only thing is to find them in the payroll, surely that is fraud.
The audit further revealed that more than 180 people were given the position of director, deputy director, and assistant director, with only 44 personnel having genuine documents to occupy such office. At the same time, the county has more than 100 drivers, despite having only 12 vehicles operating. Governor Jama also reported massive pay discrepancies across the various job groups.
Find, for instance, somebody who is in job group K was suddenly taken straight away to job group Q or R. That is not in the law of the country.
The governor has since formed a task force that will meet all asked staff to verify their documents. Jama served as Garissa governor in the first term of devolution, was ejected in 2017 before making a comeback in the 2022 polls. Yusuf Mahat Abdi, NTV, Garissa.
All right, thanks Yusuf Mahad Abdi. Well, time to look at the dailies, and before that, I'm not alone in studio. Of course, remember that discussion on our troops in the DRC, what it means for the region. Allow me to introduce my panelists this morning, Professor Noah Midamba, Senior Associate, Global Center for Policy and Strategy. A very good morning, Prof. Karibu sana after a long time. And of course, Dr. Momo Nzao, Security Advisor and Statescraft Expert at the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies. Thank you so much, Dr. for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
So we'll just take a quick look at what's in the dailies before we get into our discussion. Man on a mission, Ruto's 126 meetings in 60 days. President Ruto has held 126 publicized meetings in his 60 days in office, hosting as many as 4 a day amid pressure to deliver on the many promises he made on the campaign trail. Well, a Nation Newsplex analysis shows that since his swearing in on September 13th, he has not been engaged. He has only been engaged on 5 days. All right, and there you have it outside Nairobi, all the places that the president has visited and some of the issues that have been raised there. And still on the very front page of the Daily Nation, PS nominees line up for vetting by members of parliament. That, by the way, is starting today. Well, the ghosts from the past, knowledge and experience in the docket, nominated to and plans to lift the country from its current predicaments, will be some of the issues President William Ruto's principal secretary's nominees will be confronted with as they face members of parliament today for vetting. And unlike the vetting of the cabinet secretaries, which was conducted by a single committee, the National Assembly Committee on Appointments, the 51 individuals will face the various departmental committees of the House. So it depends which committee will be vetting each PS nominees. World Bank will ensure good use of climate fund. Remember, the COP27 is still ongoing in Egypt. And as that continues, which is the 27th UN Climate Change Conference, continues in Egypt, the main focus now is on the need to scale up climate financing. The World Bank has been taking part in discussions and events as one of the main financial institutions. And you can find that full report there by Pauline Ongaji. And moving forward, we are underusing our water, say Maasai women at COP27, just among the issues that have been raised by those who are representing Kenya in Egypt at the COP27. Moving forward, MPs now target Uhuru-era laws for amendment. Legislators cite several regulations put in place by cabinet secretaries and state agencies. Well, these members of parliament are training their guns on a number of those laws and regulations made during President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure, claiming they're illegal since they were not presented before the House for approval. So this will be very interesting to see how that will be panning out in Parliament. And just at a glance, most agencies do not conduct public participation. This is according to the Tiati Member of Parliament, William Kamket, who chaired the Committee on Delegated Legislation in the 12th Parliament, saying that most agencies do not conduct public participation as they come to Parliament. All right, PS nominees, like I said, vetting to start today. Very interesting. We'll be giving you a 360-degree coverage of the same. Meanwhile, President busy, but hustlers yet to feel his hard work. It is a full splash report there on pages 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. Ruto dilemma in cutting cost and rewarding loyalists. Well, there are 9 extra PSs to earn 412 million over 5 years. It will be very interesting, as yet he's set to name Chief Administrative Secretary nominees this month. How will it look like, economically speaking? And finally, on the Daily Nation, perhaps we can look at what's on the Standard. Kibwana quits politics, eyes state job. The former Makueni governor is reportedly angling for a post in President William Ruto's administration. This is just 3 months after losing his bid to represent Makueni County in the Senate. That's the former governor, Kivutha Kibwana, who says, "I am done with elective politics," although the prof cited his advancing age as the reason for the move. Nation understands that he's angling for that position in President William Ruto's administration. Report there by Pius Maundu, very interesting. You can find that on the 8th page of the Daily Nation. Just adjacent to that, poll petition against Wajir governor set to start. This is that petition against the Wajir governor Ahmed Abdullahi, which begins this morning as the petitioner Hassan Mohammed seeks the nullification of the August 9th poll, saying the exercise was not free and fair. All right, we'll move away from that, but this is just another quick look. No prison break as committee turns to modern tech. Report by Kitavi Mutua there. It talks about the enhanced security prompted by last year's escape by 3 terror convicts. So how does it look like right now? Police reservists did not receive a cent from the 60 million bounty promised by the government. Remember the 3 men who staged a prison break at committee? There they are. Well, it will be very interesting to see how the security situation is at the committee maximum prison there. All right. So we will get to one story here when we come back, but let me just leave it at this for now. We will use all means to end banditry, Ruto vows. I'll perhaps get my reaction from my panelists this morning on that, but this is what also on the, just quick look at the front page of the Business Daily. Share of financially stable Kenyans halves in 5 years, while the cost of living and runaway inflation to blame. COVID shocks leaves wealthy households on shaky ground. So that's on the very front page of Taifa Leo, all about the economy of the country. And Taifa Leo, waliomwasi Raila Walia, and you have a couple of names there. You have Jack Ranguma, Evans Kidero, Kivutha Kibwana, Nicholas Gumbo, Peter Anyango, among others there. And it says wanasiasa waliomwasi kiongozi wa ODM Raila Odinga baada ya kushindwa kwenye uchaguzi mkuu wameanza kubuni safari mpya za kisiasa, matarajio yao ya kupata viti katika serikali mpya ya kigonga mwamba. All right. And the East African, inside KQ, SAA Dream Carrier. Visa-free travel expected to increase passenger traffic to the 2 airlines as technical team works towards Pan-African project by June 2023. All right, before we get to, Prof and Dr. Momo, before we get to the issues of the regional, security, let's just quickly take a look at what's happening here in the country. We will use all means to end banditry. And this is one of perhaps the biggest issues we're facing right now when it comes to the security inside the country. Remember, President had previously warned that the warnings have gone unheeded as deadly attacks still continue to happen. The bandits are becoming more and more bold. We're seeing that there's a lot of proliferation of, small arms. Dr. Momo, just give us a sense of why do you think the situation is so bad right now, especially when we're talking about the northern part of the country?
Yes, one of the problems that drives some of these, acts of crime or criminal acts, some of these also are they're cultural factors. So there are many factors that come together. Political factors, so leaders. And you saw His Excellency President William Ruto, our dear head of state,
right,
talking directly to the leaders and telling them that if you're not committed, then it's a problem, right, and we have to work together. So there are political factors. Then there are other factors associated with matters to do with culture, crime itself.
So it's
just
like
criminal,
a multi-layered
situation. It's a multifaceted,
right,
it's a mix of factors,
right,
which come together, some of them institutional within the security architecture, some of them, also regional factors. That region up there, the North Rift and so on,
right,
is the border with Uganda, the border with South Sudan, the border with Ethiopia and so on. And so the most important thing as we approach the problem is what we call conditions of necessity and sufficiency. Is it necessary? Yes. It is necessary to go for the bandits, to reprimand them, because if they cannot be allowed to be.
But this is a situation
the
that
law,
has gone on for decades.
Yeah, that's why I'm
end.
saying I'm getting there.
Right.
So look, it's necessary.
Right.
It may not be sufficient. Necessary because the law must be obeyed. You cannot be allowed to carry weapons, to harm people, you know. It's the work of the government to protect the people, the their liberty, their property, their life. So that's primary, that's standard.
Right.
So that's necessary. It may not be sufficient sometimes because of all these factors I'm telling you, especially the question of values. And these values, societies have to agree. So security is a communal affair, is a societal affair, and it needs those core values that drive some of those things to be reworked and to be readdressed. And it goes back to community leadership and the values of those communities. You'll find there is a number of communities. They look at it at themselves like enemies at times and so on, but in between they are criminal enterprises, and they drive those young people to go and steal cows and so on. And the bad thing is that in the process they harm innocent people. Children can't go to school and so on, and the government must step in, and therefore the head of state is on the right path on this one.
Prof, indeed, the president has made quite strong statements in terms of how he hopes to handle the situation there. But we've seen even the previous administrations that were in place have not really been able to sufficiently and effectively manage the situation in the North Rift.
Thank you for having us, Zainab, and pleased with my colleagues here. We have not seen each other for a long time.
Indeed.
I concur with what Dr. Mumo is saying. This is not an easy situation. It's a very complex web of issues that need to be carefully crafted and addressed in a systematic way. Dr. Mumo mentioned a number. But I will just add a little bit. One is level of education, level of development in the area, cultural, political, historical, economy, all woven together. And therefore, reacting to what is happening does not address the root cause of the issue. So we need to be committed for sustainable, systematic approach to change the lifestyle of the people, improve the environment, improve the law enforcement consistently, so that then you can capture and bring the people, while at the same time addressing issue of need economy.
So moving away from being reactionary to a more long-term kind of approach.
That is what is going to solve the issue.
Right.
With all the studies we have looked at and everything, there is no any other way.
Right.
Yeah, so shouting about it is not helpful.
All right. All right. So let's move away from this and to that report on the DRC before we get into our conversation. And the last batch of the Kenyan troops heading into eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo is expected to leave within the week for an initial 6-month peacekeeping mission under the East African Regional Force umbrella. Now, Kenya will be leading the mission, headquarters in Goma, whose mandate will be to keep peace and conduct a disarmament exercise. Here's NTV's Leila Mohammed with an in-depth look into the Congo mission, a mission with many fasts.
Fresh advances by armed group M23 in Rugari, a town 18 kilometers outside of Goma, have prompted the United Nations peacekeeping mission there to increase its alert level and boost support for the Congolese army. With the entry of the ECRAF mission troops in Goma, diplomacy and security experts have expressed confidence of finally silencing the guns in the volatile region.
In Africa, we have seen that there has been delays in terms of
either UN or AU coming in, and the neighbors like ECOWAS and SADC have always responded in time. This time we have now seen a situation where there's a gap, and the EAC for the first time has deployed a force to one of its member states.
The eastern part of the DRC has witnessed armed conflict over at least 3 decades as armed groups battle to control rich natural resources. The DRC, Africa's largest state by landmass, has seen 120 forces or armed groups engaging government forces in its eastern part alone.
M23 inatatiza raia.
The EAC mission has its work cut out as it seeks to disarm these groups with minimal offensive moves.
Eastern DRC, there are other forces. We have the UN with well over almost close to 18,000 troops, and we have, as part of the UN and AU, the Force Intervention Brigade. And we know the recent clashes where the UN and the FIB have been committed to go and address those clashes. Out of that, there have been gaps that need to be filled. And basically, this force will go in, fill that gap, and ensure that in those areas, number one, civilians are safe, and secondly, the armed groups are disarmed.
While military peace enforcement has been at the heart of silencing the guns and halting the exodus of millions running for safety, dialogue is a key part of peace efforts.
And we have brought in over 56 rebel groups together here in Nairobi and in the eastern DRC. And we have seen success, as you know, because the situation in the lower Kivus and in other parts of the DRC has actually markedly improved. The challenge that we face is in the North Kivus, and for that we are still working very hard to ensure that we try to reach out to the M23 and to others.
Kenya has stated its intent going into the mission.
And DRC is within our neighborhood. So it's in our interest, our national security interest, it's in our economic interest, it is the interest of everybody.
All the others are neighbors of the DRC. It's believed they have interest. All the countries of the EAC have committed troops. Tanzania is coming, but at a very slow pace. Burundi is already in place. They came in August. Uganda has promised to come in up in the north, in the Ituri and North Kivu. And also the South Sudan has said they'll come in the Heart region to try and control the area. For us, because of our lack of interest in the politics of that region, we've been appointed as the force commander.
By taking the lead point in the ECRAF mission inside the DRC, Nairobi is once again asserting herself as a diplomatic leader, with peacekeeping missions having been conducted all over across the globe. This is also another feather in their cap.
To date, I think we are standing at 46 since independence. So we have stood to be counted, and this is one of those missions where we are making our contribution as we have.
The Kenyan Parliament gave their blessing for the mission and approved a hefty budgetary allocation of 4.5 billion shillings to cater for the initial expenses of the troops. The ECRAF mission will begin responding to the latest strife in Rugari, where the UN has reported that at least 188,000 people had fled their villages since October 20th, the start of the new M23 offensive. 16,500 people have taken refuge in neighboring Uganda. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
All right, thanks, Leila. And that situation continues to escalate. Here's a report here in the Daily Nation just giving us an update of the situation. Troops in the DR Congo clashed with M23 rebels north of the key eastern city of Goma on Sunday. This is according to officials in the latest violence to hit the troubled region. Army sources who spoke on condition of anonymity said the military was engaging the M23 in Mwaro, that's a village about 20 kilometers north of Goma. And in a statement dated Saturday, the group accused the Congolese army of conducting what they're calling barbarian bombings in heavily populated areas, killing about 15 civilians, including 2 children. But this is a report by AFP saying they were unable to independently confirm the death toll. The clashes coming just a day after the Kenyan troops deployed to eastern DRC as part of that military operation from the 7 East African community to stabilize the volatile region. Professor Midamba, let me get to you first, just to give us a sense of what is happening in at least the eastern part of DR Congo that has even prompted, you know, Nairobi to send its troops? Just give us a sense of the situation there so that we can understand the context within which we're having this conversation.
Zainabu, that's a very good question. Give me a few minutes to give a global picture so that our audience can understand what's going on.
Right.
First is Kenya is going. Why is Kenya going and ready to go? When you look at the East Africa, Eastern Central Africa, Kenya has the largest economy controlling this region. Kenya is worth $145 billion US, only followed by Ethiopia, Tanzania, Congo, and lastly, Burundi. Now, Congo itself, DRC Congo itself, is estimated to have $25 trillion of resources in its underneath the country.
Right.
The richest country in the world is the US,
right,
with $25 trillion. So imagine the size of Congo and also the ability for Congo to develop. And then you are looking at the wealthiest countries in the world will be Africa in the future. Now, so let me get back to Kenya. Kenya is number 4 largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa and number 6 in all over Africa. And then we're looking at another thing, which is called global firepower, the country readiness to defend itself and also help others. We're looking at manpower, we're looking at range of weaponry, we're looking at logistic flexibility, and we're looking at the budget that Kenya has got. So Kenya is the largest military readiness in East and Central Africa. In other words, for years, Kenya was considered a relaxed leader of East Africa because Southern Africa is basically controlled by South Africa. West Africa is controlled by Nigeria. North Africa is controlled by Egypt. But Kenya, until recently, until Uhuru came to power, President Uhuru, was completely reluctant where things are happening. The issue is what happened in our neighbor, like Somalia, like South Sudan, like Uganda, like DRC Congo, affect everything we do here. We're moving closer as Africans in realizing what people like Kwame Nkrumah, Jamal Abdel Nasser, Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, Tom Mboya, their aspiration was to have United States of Africa.
Right.
But President Nyerere argued that it needs to be done from a regional standpoint, which is the most practical way. We are realizing that. Today, right now, you and I, when we need a passport, we get East African passport, and then underneath is Kenya.
Right.
The same thing, DRC Congo is going to do the same thing with Rwanda and everybody else. Now, when you're looking at our economy here and looking at the suburbs in Nairobi, there are cars from everywhere, from DRC Congo to Tanzania to Uganda to South. These people are investing in our economy. They're investing in real estate. They're creating jobs. So some of the resources in Kivu area, which is the biggest, one of the biggest in the world, is finding its way here. And so that whole area is very, very critical to the development of Africa. And therefore, it is very important for Kenya to go in as part of the East Africa community, to go in to solve African problem by African people for the first time. So we are looking at the development of M23. Development of M23 will not be there if Uganda and Rwanda, for instance, get along right now. If Burundi pull out of the area, if Congo Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, all these are people which are countries which are involved. They're extracting resources. They're exporting what they don't have, but is coming from that area. They're supporting the issue. And so when Africans are going in, ideally, preferably, will be not to include Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda in the scene. But we are going to solve the problem, and everybody must have the responsibility. Kenya has put its 4.5 billion ahead of time to support its force. I am serving on the Inter-University Council of East Africa until last year. Kenya is one of the countries that always pays due on time. So we are very pleased that President William Ruto has allowed what President Kenyatta stepped forward to do, which is really create leadership for this country by action. We are paying our dues, we are involved directly, and if you remember, President Kenyatta was the only head of state at the inauguration of President Seke in Congo. And we have created a relationship and a potential, huge potential for economy of scale, for our banking system, our development, our agriculture, and everything. It's a very critical area where we have to be directly involved.
All right. And we'll certainly come back to the dynamics around the involvement of Uganda and Rwanda into the DRC in a moment. But Dr. Mumo, from where you sit and just analyzing the situation, so this conflict has been there for decades, to say, but there seems to be an escalation of the situation in DRC that has suddenly prompted the troops to be sent there. And of course, a lot of eyes traded on what is happening in the eastern part of DRC. From where you sit, what does it look like?
Yes, thank you, Zainab, and thank you, Professor. The problem in DRC Congo is part of what we call a externalization of an internal conflict, or what we call regionalization of a national conflict. And it has historical roots that go back to the Cold War. This is not the first mission. There was a mission there 1960. In fact, one of the first 60 to 65, one of the earliest missions, UN missions after Kashmir and after Lebanon and a few others, was actually Congo. It's one of the earliest. And there was a very big contingent of troops there, multinational those years, because of problems associated with tensions that had to do with the Cold War. There was a rebellion there. And some of these groups that you see today as rebel groups and so on, what we call armed militia or armed non-state actors or armed non-state groups, they go back to the 60s, the 70s. There were groups there called Vasimba, Mai Mai, and those Mai Mai are still there.
They have they believe in spiritual...
Yes, spiritual
powers.
So issues, yeah.
Right.
There was a lady there called Mama Marie Onema.
Right.
There was Professor Wamba Diawamba. The late President Loro Kabila himself. Those people were in various splinter groups those days, in Katanga, in Kananga, all the way to the eastern part. So these are issues that have evolved over time, and they have sucked in the rest of the regional countries. Now, what happened in 1965, 66, those years, Colonel Joseph Mobutu, he was called Mobutu Sese Seko, he was supported by Western powers, especially those countries that were at that time supporting the West in the Cold War. And so he managed to stay on, until the Cold War forces could not support those issues, and his regime collapsed. Sometime in 1996, when Laurent Kabila came in, and when Laurent Kabila came in, he was with rebel groups from all over the place. And when they got in, they could not, there was a power vacuum, and they could not manage properly. There were issues, and fighting became intense. And the conflict was very bad, 1997, 1998. And so by 1999, there was need to bring in a UN mission. And that mission was called United Nations Organization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It was MONUC. Then it stayed on until 2010, roundabout. And because now things had stabilized, because the first election, Zainab, since 1960, 61 and so on, was in 2006. You can imagine. And President Mobutu ruled with an iron fist. It worked, but there were other issues. There were a lot of disgruntled groups. There were always rebel groups all over the place, but they were in the periphery. And so some bad things happened. There was a genocide in Rwanda. There was fighting in Burundi. There was war in Central African Republic. There was war in Sudan because of South Sudan, North-South and all that. And all these things were felt in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so there were rebel groups from Uganda that were inside the Democratic Republic of Congo. And because it's a big country, it's a big, beautiful country with jungles and forests and villages all the place, sometimes it becomes a very good place for cover for some of these groups. So local people sometimes also would get sucked in and they start their own militias. Then you have what you call private militaries, kind of, you know, the kind of thing you call like mercenaries, people who just come around, they are hired by various interested parties to enforce security and such things. And so it became very complicated. And so in 2010, there was a United Nations resolution, I think it was 1925, that set up, that transformed that mission into a stabilization mission, sort of to oversee the transition. It was called MONUSCO. So for MONUC, it was renamed MONUSCO, Stabilization, United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in DRC. And so that is how we've ended up with all these groups now.
Because we're talking about what?
56 of, yes.
More than 120 I was reading?
Yes, you have small ones. Right. Those ones, those Mai Mai, you have Mai Mai Yanganga, Mai Mai Kutumba, Mai Mai Kutumba. You have all manner of Mai Mais down there. Then you have a group that is a rebel group that has been, you know, eyeing the southeastern part, southwestern sort of parts of Uganda. It's called ADF, Allied Democratic Forces. And then international terror groups, Zainab, that ISIS, Daesh, Dawla Islamiyya fi al-Iraq wa al-Sham, that's what we call it. This one, when it was defeated, especially in the Middle East because of the fighting there in Syria and so on, they started to have these people escaping to start small cells in these parts. And now they have a group there. Do you know what it calls itself? It calls itself Medina e Tawhid wa Mujahideen. You know what it means? It means city of monotheism and holy warriors. Now, it sounds like a good thing, but they are bad people. They are terrorists. They go to, they have staged attacks inside Kampala. And then so President Museveni deployed General Muhanga to lead the troops that went into those parts of DRC, Eastern DRC. Then, going back to the Rwanda genocide, there's a group there, FLDR. And these ones are people who had been involved in the genocide, and they crossed into DRC.
All right.
And destabilizing there. Then M23, this M23, is yet another one formed locally there by groups that are disgruntled also, that and so on. Now, what happens with a country when it's gone through all this? You form what we call ungoverned spaces. And these ungoverned spaces, they're sort of pockets of vacuum spaces of places where government is not in good control. And so these negative forces occupy these places, and they sort of become law unto themselves.
So this is where they start, the DRC finds itself?
Yeah, and they start...
This is the space within which it cannot be able to govern the situation.
Exactly. So they destabilize the country.
Okay.
They harm women and children down there in Goma. And Goma is such a very beautiful place, and with a population of over 1 million people, a very vibrant place. The East African economy put together, like what Professor was saying, our market force is almost 550 million people. If we do that, if we stabilize that block, our EAC block, with these 7 countries now, we are going to be doing very well. And that is what Kenya is going to do there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll come back and continue with that conversation. We have to take a quick break here on M Live on NTV. Remember, you can always engage with us. Any questions, comments, the hashtag to use as always is M Live NTV at NTV Kenya. Zainab Ismail, talk to us. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us.
Welcome to the biggest cycling event in Kenya. The Jubilee Live Free Race, powered by GNBR, is happening at KICC on Sunday, November 2022. There will be cash prizes of up to 3 million Kenya shillings to be won. Other exciting rewards, including a trip for 2 to Leopard Beach Hotel for 2 nights. Register to participate today on www.jubileegnrlivefreerace.co.ke. See you there.
There's something I need you to do. I want you to drive this car somewhere far away, out of town, then leave it there.
Well, since you'll be doing a DNA test anyway, I highly suggest you ask Gabriel Villoria to undergo one.
But sir, Gabriel's not a suspect.
Well, we discovered something here. He was with my mom during the night she had an accident. We're still convincing the hotel employee to recount his statement to the police, but in the meantime, isn't that really enough to consider Gabriel Villoria as a suspect?
Forever, my love.
Did you know you can open a family bank account without having to visit a branch? Simply download PesaPap app from Google Play Store or Apple Store to enjoy freedom and convenience. All you need is your ID card, KRA PIN, and camera phone.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review has got you covered for in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues. The Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read the Weekly Review every Sunday on Nation e-paper and on www.nation.africa, free of charge.
Who is a man and what defines a man?
Strong and sacrificing.
Passionate and purposeful.
Industrious and independent.
A leader and a lover. Ambitious and adventurous.
Provider and protector.
But wait, what of the weak and wounded?
And what beats down and bothers the brothers? What are the real feelings of the fellas?
Well, whatever season you're in, we welcome you to The Man Cave. What beats a Saturday afternoon with the boys, sharing experiences, networking, socializing, digging into good food, grooving to great music by DJ Jom Falme and Hype God, and learning from inspirational presentations by an eminent panel of men? From wealth to health, retirement, authentic relationships, coping with midlife crisis, or just re-examining your role as a man, come to this gathering of men, the Man Cave. Saturday, 26th November, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Summer House, Karen. Grab your tickets at 2,500 shillings from Kenya Buzz.
The Man Cave. Be there.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV. Of course, indeed, we are having a discussion on that move by Nairobi to send its soldiers to a peacekeeping mission there in the Democratic Republic of Congo. What does that mean for the country and especially the region at large? Prof, I was getting to you in a moment now, and looking at some of the issues and the underlying dynamics around why we are where we are right now and why Nairobi had to send its soldiers to the DRC. You talked about the fact that there is, rich resource in the DRC. But even away from that, obviously the conversation is multi-layered and there's so many things that are coming into it. Dr. Momo mentioned the fact that, historically speaking, there are so many things that happened to point to where we are. Maybe looking at, the position of Rwanda and Uganda in this conversation, take us through, initial, context into why we've reached that point where Uganda has interests in Rwanda, I mean in DRC, and you also have Rwanda interests in DRC, and what does it mean for that security in that part?
Thank you, Senator. My colleague here, Kisaus, explained the complex web of issues involved in this particular area. And then there is also a conclusion that unless we solve the rivalry between Rwanda and Uganda, we will not touch the underneath the issues that are involved here. We know 1994 massive refugees from Rwanda genocide move into the area, and then they could develop into an armed force because the area is poorly ungoverned, almost undeveloped, uneducated, and then rich in mineral. So basically, the countries caved in the cave areas of their sphere of interest. And southern Kivu is Burundi, and the northern Kivu is Rwanda and Uganda. And Rwanda and Uganda have become very serious rivals. Now, given that M23 literally helped Museveni into the presidency of Uganda and also helped the president of Rwanda and also helped overthrow Mobutu to where we are right now. So it is a conclusion in terms of all the writers and researchers like Claude Tubuke. Claude de Kubuke concluded that unless the underlying factors between Rwanda and Uganda are addressed, we cannot change much in this area. Now, then the question comes, why is the economy the big picture here for these other countries? And you find out the resurgence is tied directly to the business of interest of these countries. DRC Congo is the world leading producer of what's called cobalt. And
this is for what, making batteries, I believe?
That's correct, in the world.
Right.
And you
biggest producer?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
So the issue, they are the biggest in the world.
Correct.
And they're produced in this area. And so Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda are all in it for their national interest and for the economy. Now, Burundi and Uganda are exporting products they do not produce in their own countries. Between 1998 and 2002, International Court of Justice ordered Uganda to pay DRC 325 million of products they have extracted out of this area. Gold is Uganda's largest export, yet Uganda produces very little gold in their own country. DRC is the world, as I said, largest producer of large quantity of export by Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi. So all these countries are extracting goods out of this area called Kivu. What are the risks of interstate conflict? It is very serious. The threat of interstate conflict in the area will be mixed up with the international interest. And sooner or later, we are going to have large power conflict in the area because we have these very, very bad people from Russia that are overtaking the Central Africa called the Wagner groups. They're coming down to this area. America will not stand back to watch them take from the area. Now, will President Tshisekedi be the one that will manage all these various interests together? Will he manage and balance Russian interests, balance American interests, and maybe Chinese in the future? And therefore, the East Africa community came to the conclusion that we have to deploy our armed forces, and we have to pay for it ourselves in order to save Congo. And saving Congo is best for the entire African continent. The president of Uganda troop in North Kivu is perceived by Rwanda as a real threat to their national interest. So it is very important to get Uganda and Rwanda speaking the same language. Kenya has no interest demonstrated. The other countries that have no interest. So the preferred situation would have been to have African countries, army, where the country does not have any conflict of interest. But given the situation, economic situation in Africa, you cannot exclude Uganda here and exclude Rwanda and exclude Burundi. The most important thing is for them to be perceived as speaking the same situation, same policy, same commitment like DRC Congo.
Right. Dr. Mumo, I mean,
Yes.
okay, so that Prof has really given us a complex
That's
situation
right. That's
of how the situation looks like.
Yeah.
But let me get from you as well, okay, so we are seeing a resurgent
Yes.
of the crisis. It's sort of, you know, it's been sparked by
Yes.
some reason.
Yes.
Because that happened from November last year.
Okay.
Up until now, we're seeing now the M23
Yeah.
coming out strongly and trying to capture more territory in that
Yeah.
vast region, I think in the northern Kivu
Yes.
part. Maybe just tell us, first of all, I mean, the role of Rwanda
Yes.
and the role of Uganda
That's right.
in this conflict.
Yeah, one thing is we sometimes in what we call a strategy, you may find that you are just seeing Rwanda and Uganda, but it's a complex web of other actors that are even global powers and other issues, like Professor is talking about. this group of, these are called private military outfits that you hire. So there's that group they're calling Wagner from Russia and so on. But the most important thing is Africa has got to solve its problems. Before you call people into your house, you've got to clean your house. And that cleaning of the house is the call that goes back to those days of Nkrumah, those days of Mwalimu Nyerere, Mzee Kenyatta, and so on. And
you have to go back in history.
Yes. And it takes you back to the thinking that is now embodied in what we call Africa Agenda 2063. The future we want for Africa, Africa Agenda 2063. And at the core of it, there are several pillars of it. And one of them is the peace and security pillar under the Africa Peace and Security Architecture. And the Africa Peace and Security Architecture brings in these sub-regions. So you have Eastern Africa, ours, then you have Southern Africa, you have West Africa, you have sort of, you know, the Maghreb, the North, Maghreb North, and that kind of thing. And each of these forces, or each of these regions, there's also the Central African, actually, that brings together those countries, Rwanda, Burundi, and so on, up to Central African Republic and so on. There's also that facet of it. Now, all these should form what is called the Africa Standby Force. And so you have these smaller regional forces, like the East Africa Standby Force. There's sort of the smaller units, the components that make the bigger one. These are part of the whole discussion of the Africa Peace and Security Architecture. So what you're seeing now being operationalized with a Kenyan contingent, it started now with a battalion. A battalion is about 900 men, officers and men, and servicemen. And under that arrangement, it was being seen as though in the last 5-6 years, with the operationalization of the standby force, there was all this talk among practitioners and scholars that how active is the East African component. And so there was need to really operationalize it. When there was a problem in Burundi, sometime in 2015, thereabout, when we had President Pierre Nkurunziza and now President Ndayishimiye, there are problems of state formation and stabilization that still face our countries. And we cannot afford to lose Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, or sort of, you know, edge them out. We need their buy-in. And so what you're seeing now as an East Africa Community regional force is something that all these countries have now consented. It's a very beautiful thing, a very good thing. What is causing, sometimes you find Rwanda and Uganda being mentioned, is because of historical issues. It doesn't just go back to this genocide that was in '94. In 1959, there was a revolt, a bad one, just before independence in Rwanda. And one group was ostracized because you know, the colonialists had used divide and rule, and they had made Africans to hate each other. And so one group was attacked, and they found refuge in Uganda, in parts of Uganda, and other, mostly Uganda, southeastern Uganda, and so on, in places called Kigezi and so on. And they stayed there, and they had to go back and, you know, started groups there to fight and so on. At the same time, even in Burundi, there was a problem there in the 70s, 74, up to 76. It started as a kingdom, then there was a military rule and other things. So all these things were proxy interests also associated with Cold War. Now when the genocide ended in '94, these group that I'm calling FLDR, these were former, you know, people who had organized genocide and so on, and they went into Congo.
So they had to run away from Rwanda.
They ran away from Rwanda.
And sought refuge
refuge in Congo, sort of just taking cover down there, and remobilizing, and they started an insurgency. And Rwanda has done a very big job. And Kenya has always been called to help. It's not the first time. This is not new terrain. Kenya has had troops in MONUSCO. Kenya sent troops to Angola, to Namibia, to Chad, to Central Africa, to the entire place, to Liberia, to Sierra Leone. All those missions up. We had missions in Yugoslavia, in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. All these places we sent people down there. In all these multifaceted force, we have a hybrid force that was that is in Darfur, where Kenyan troops contingents went. AU, UN hybrid mission. Then we had a mission in South Sudan, and so on. Now back to DRC and all this. These groups then started to have what you call insurgency kind of tactics, and they would, get into, especially from the northern parts of Rwanda, in the district they are called Musanze, and they would make incursions there, and those incursions is about killing people and hurting villagers and doing bad things. And we went there in a training assistance mission. Kenya led that time, a Kenyan battalion.
Right.
And they went there and trained Rwanda a lot to professionalize the force and so on. And it helped to cool down all these insurgency things. Now the problem is that DRC Congo, especially after the Cold War, a lot of other external powers took advantage of that vacuum, especially with the fall of Mobutu regime. Imagine President Lauro Kabila came in 96, 97. On the 16th of January, 2001, he was assassinated. And he was assassinated. There's something Professor said that these groups, the rebel groups, and they've been used, some of them just armed militias, to capture power elsewhere and so on, to help movements. And it was a struggle. And so originally, what you're calling M23 and so on, there were groups like that one that was called Banyamulenge. And these ones came in with Lauro Kabila, and because some of these were very irregular, sort of irregular people and so on, that unfortunate incident of 16th of January 2001 happened. And then later, African countries came together. They went in there. In 98, there were up to 11 African countries there. Angola sent troops. Zimbabwe sent troops and so on. And they stabilized, and that's how we ended up with Joseph Kabila, the son of Lauro Kabila. And then later, the elections of 2006 and so on. So it took a long time. Now, the word is stabilization, and it comes with other processes. To demobilize, first, people with arms, you demobilize them. And it has to be consensual. Then you reintegrate them. So demobilization, then you stabilize them, So you reintegrate them, you repatriate them. So there are people who, it is not right to say that these people who are fighting in Eastern DRC, they are refugees. No, they are actually Congolese. And it is not far-fetched to say, well, other countries have interest there. But the supreme interest of countries, their national interest is, the supreme interest is survival. And it is the responsibility of Uganda, of Rwanda, of Burundi, and these countries to guarantee the security and survival of their people. And if the threat, the source of insecurity is coming from the vacuum, the disorder that is in those parts of Eastern, North Kivu, and so on, up to Beni Butembo, these countries have to be concerned. Now, one thing then we have done is to create a buffer. So Kenyans go, the Kenyan contingent goes there. They don't have these localized interests. They are good in Kiswahili, because people speak a lot of Kiswahili down there. They could be, most of Eastern DRC, they speak Kiswahili, they can hear. And is good maybe that way to protect the women. Dialect, yes, just different dialect. Right. You can help that way to get children to go to school, to get the women you know, to the villagers to live a normal life, because there are bad things that happen there, you know, rape and other things, war crimes and other things. That has to be stopped, to create a buffer zone. So you go there first. The mission is not about to fight and harm people. And that's what the Kenyan audience must learn, because the other day they were writing these nasty things they say in Twitter when they're talking to politicians here. It's a very sensitive thing. We are going there to help the children, the women, to get the fighters, to convince them, like what General Pande was doing down there in Liberia, you know, in Sierra Leone and those places, and Angola, to get them to put their arms down. And then to see those that are genuinely refugees that belong to other countries to be repatriated, because there's what you call non-refoulement. You can't force them to go back if they feel there's a threat back home. Then remember, you have to disentangle. There are terrorists down there, terrorist groups. Like that one I told you, Medina Itawhid wa Mujahideen, and they were sending, including our own National Counterterrorism Center here. We know there are people there planning to carry out attacks here in Nairobi. It's not a joke. So these are very sensitive issues. Our soldiers are not there just to go and shoot people, no. It's not a fight, it's not a competition. Right. It's a way first to keep the militants away, so you observe. So when you call it a peace support operation, it's multifaceted. One is to observe the truce, to ensure that if there's a ceasefire, you create a buffer zone, so that no one can abuse that, you know, what you call that line that has been put of that buffer zone.
So they act as a neutral.
Yes, neutral. Yeah, exactly. Then number two, to enable, you know, capital, goods, services to flow, and infrastructure. The more you develop a country, again, taking care of the environment without destroying the environment, because if you have too many, if you go and destroy the environment, then you create environmental refugees. That country is very beautiful, plenty of water, plenty of resources. All we need now is good roads, good communication, investment. Like in Goma right now, Kenya has got a lot of interest there, and the whole of East Africa in that place, and the entire Eastern DRC, because there's room for investment, for exchange, for market, for capital, for exchange of goods and services.
Not just for Kenya, but
for the entire
states.
region.
Right.
So we can't, we should not, we should refrain from castigating Uganda, that's my point, or Rwanda or Burundi, but to have their buy-in and to help disentangle the problem. Because if there are people there, like I told you about ADF, they're planning to carry out terror attacks in Kampala like they did last year.
Right.
So it has to be handled with a lot of care. And that is why Kenya is being preferred. It's neutral to lead the mission. Right. They have a force commander. They will be given sectors. They will observe. And then there's that level of enforcement where if you see people want to threaten villagers and all this, you can carry out an operation to disarm them. But the best thing is if it is consensual and mutual.
All right.
Yeah.
And Prof, so we're having our troops there, but remember we also do have other peacekeeping missions already established in the DRC. So what are we doing? Are we doing something a bit different? Okay, of course, you know, Dr. Momo has mentioned what we expected to do, that, you know, the different facets of the soldiers there. But then, are they going to do anything different than what the UN peacekeeping mission perhaps is doing in the DRC?
Let me, first of all, Sao has done a very good job in terms of giving our audience the complexity of the kind of situation we're dealing with. Before I talk about how can we remove tension and de-escalation of the situation, and who's credible enough to do that, I want to just add a few more points.
All right.
Rwanda, as a Malaysia called FDLR, that are committed to overthrowing the government of Rwanda. Uganda, like Shao said, as ADF, we're also committed to overthrowing the government of Uganda.
All right.
And Burundi has RED, R-E-D. They're also committed to overthrowing the government of Burundi. They're all here.
So let me get this right. All right. So in Uganda we have ADF.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Rwanda we have
FLDR.
FLDR. And in
Burundi we have RED. And in Congo?
RED.
And then the DRC we have
all these militias in there.
All these militias.
More than 100 militias.
Completely.
Yeah.
They are all in there. Okay. And the ones committed to overthrow the government of
Correct.
Congo, they're all there.
Right.
So I want to lay down factors that will help de-accelerate and bring the folks together. Number one is Kenya's injected a sense of agency, which is really outstanding, and a clear leadership, which is required of Kenya, given its size of economy and its military readiness. There has to be a rigorous, confident building with effort involving DRC, Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and M23. All of them, one way or another, has to be brought together on a table. You can't say we separate so and so.
Right.
And then once that is diffused, so that they are part and parcel of fighting the evil forces, the destructive forces, we reinforce the government of DRC. That is our role in order to establish control over this environment and be able to now create development. So Kenya forces are not only going to shoot, they are going to educate, they are going to harmonize people, they are going to deal with issue of emotional issues that nobody else is addressing. They're going in as a really ready-made, very well prepared force to join in the whole effort of DRG Congo to turn the place into a development zone without extracting interest to what's going on. However, as we said, the best approach is confident building. The people of Congo don't trust anyone at this point. They need to be part of the force, the good force that trusts the development. So you cannot have armed forces which are not supported by the people because the people will rebel or inform or join militia or do other things in order to distract from whatever we are trying to do. The previous attempt by South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania worked. And the reason it worked, it was militarily effective. That's number one. And two, its member had no interest in extracting goods out of that area, which is very, very important. Now, there is a need to establish political harmony between the militant group. And there is a need to make sure that the militant groups are brought on board with the idea that the Congolese can be extracted and they join the force, Congolese force. The Uganda can be accepted back to join Uganda force. The Rwandese can do the same thing. Burundians can do the same thing. Going in to shoot them will not solve the problem. We have to be able to reach them, and reach them with a joint effort, a rigorous effort by United Nations, AU, and everybody else together. And we have to have real commitment by each country. Kenya has put its money. South Sudan has to put its money in order to go there. Tanzania has to do the same thing. Uganda has to do the same thing and commit to really a realistic security and long-term solution to the area.
But Prof, let me just stay on that point a little bit here. So one of the biggest issues right now is that with the M23 saying, look, so they have been dormant for all these years, but now they've come out but saying that the DRC had failed to honor a promise to integrate them into the army, among the other grievances that, of course,
Yes.
they do have. And one of this reason is because of that, was it the 2012 peace accord that they did sign before they went dormant, then as they came back.
Yeah.
So just talk to us about that. I mean, you're talking about figuring a way out on talking with the militants on a level where they can be able to be immobilized and probably integrated into the army, right? I don't know if that's your feeling.
That's
right.
what I'm
But you have this agreement that was already signed, and these people are coming out saying, first of all, you lied to us, and here we are. So we're taking up arms and going to fight you again.
That's what we call in military terms confidence building. Until you build confidence, you cannot make any difference. You cannot look at Ukraine-Russian war. You know, powerful army fighting a lower fight, but these guys have confidence. They're ready to die for their country. Now, these people were promised, but promise was broken. How do you bring them back in order to trust you? I don't think Rwanda can sit across the table, or Congo, DRC Congo can sit across the table, or Burundi can, and said now you can trust us. You need to bring Kenya in, you need to bring South Africa, you need to bring other people who are not directly involved or did not make any promise. And then begin confidence building. First, by Congolese, rank and file Congolese people, because they're not just innocent folks there. That's a volatile, complex relationship going on between this area. These are informers. They are integrated into the actual complex web of information giving, intelligent passing through, and all that kind of thing. So you have to bring them that we are now committed to develop this area, building roads, building hospitals, dispensary, building schools to educate the people, and then getting the Ugandans back to their force, getting Rwandese back in their force, getting Burundians back in their force, and integrating the Congolese, reinforcing Congolese, bringing in new element before we have, what I'm afraid of, which I explained earlier, before we have major international big power conflicts in the area.
Right.
Then it is totally ungoverned, we will be out of our control if that happens.
Yeah, Dr. Mumo, still staying on that particular point, looking at that pact that was signed in 2013, I think it was here in Nairobi.
Yes.
But things have not been as good, because they're saying they were supposed to be granted amnesty. That's the M23. They were supposed to be reintegrated into the Congolese army, or at least the civilian life. But that did not happen.
Yeah, if you listen to that clip that you just played just shortly, I mean a while
earlier
ago.
On, with Leila Mohammed's report?
Yes.
Right.
Ambassador Macharia said a very nice thing. He said that Kenya has brought together up to 46 of those groups. Some of those Mai Mai, and I had a chance to research deeply on that during that period, 2018, 2017,
right.
On these armed non-state groups. And Kenya went out of its way because of its diplomacy. Remember Kenya's diplomacy, 5 pillars: economic diplomacy, peace diplomacy, environmental diplomacy, diaspora diplomacy, and that kind of thing. So Kenya really is led by that philosophy. And so we managed to bring all these groups together.
Right.
Now, I want to now give you the key for deciphering that question.
Right.
In 2006, 2 scholars and they are practitioners, Doyle and Sambanis, in 2006, they wrote an interesting book they called Peacemaking. How do you make the peace work? Why do peace agreements fail, for example? They fail because of the things Professor is talking about. There are 3 things. You have to keep the groups communicating. Then you have to show commitment. When you lose the commitment, then there's a problem. Then you have to demonstrate resolve to solve the problem. So there is commitment, there is communication, and there's that whole idea of confidence building. So the communication is like when someone at a personal relationship you have with somebody and you don't communicate, you close that. The more you talk, the more you help the combatants and the parties to a conflict to talk, to communicate, you build confidence. And then you ensure that none of the parties renege on their commitments. So when you see people fighting, there is a communication problem, there is a commitment problem, and there is an issue of values that people don't want to let go. So when you have that, Doyle and Sambenis were saying, you have to have three things for a peace mission, for a peacemaking program to work in a country. You need the international community, like Professor was saying here. Then you need what we call the carrying capacity, the capacity of the country. One thing is that DRC has to be brought into a level of development, of infrastructure, of education, and so on. I tell you, when you come with goodies, things that are practical to people, because there are people just down their villages, they join these groups because they're poor, they're given weapons, they don't even fight because of values, because of a little money they will make. And even some others, they're even paid in kind, just food. And a little, a few dollars in there, and just to keep them going. So if you lift the capacity of the country, what you call the local capacity of the people, their education, their infrastructure, access to health, and so on. When we had COVID, it was double tragedy down there in Eastern Congo because of that place, Beni Butembo. There was Ebola. You can imagine, COVID is here, Ebola is here, and some of these people are fighting. They don't care there's COVID and there's Ebola, and it was a big problem managing because the whole world had been immobilized because of COVID and all these issues. And so Kenya brings in a wealth of experience. Right now, we have a strong institution here, the International Peace Support Training Center, IPSTC, under the auspices again of KDF, which trains people on matters of peace. It's been there for a long time now. It is a multifaceted, multi-donor funded thing. You have mission lead. In fact, as we are talking now, there is what we call a senior regional mission leaders course. I always see people like Brigadier Ahmed there, in the training, General Pandey. Some of us, when we get a chance, they call us, we go there, we train them on these. And these are senior commanders. That officer, Major General Jeff Nyaga, a highly decorated officer, Jeff Nyaga, an officer I have trained, I've had a chance to train him, and an officer very seasoned, right from Operation Linda and Chi up to the AMISOM, up to various missions he's undertaken.
All right.
So we are bringing in a wealth of information, a wealth of foreknowledge from missions that Kenya has undertaken over the years.
So that's what's different from at least what the other missions are also doing.
And the expertise, but also diplomatic prowess to bring all these countries together. We can't leave anyone behind, and Kenya therefore must demonstrate the leadership. At the political level, with our Commander-in-Chief, President William Ruto, it's good to go. And he's given the blessing to his mission, and the CDF now with his service commanders, and now we have General Jeff Nyaga there. So it's a good thing.
Prof, we really have to take a break. Maybe just to hold on to that thought, but when you come back, I'll get back to you immediately after that. Let's take that quick break. The hashtag to use as always is MLiveNTV. I'll be reading out some of those comments I'm seeing there on Twitter. Stay with us.
are investing in the next generation of tech dreamers. Together, we harness the power of innovation. The Family Group Foundation is the anchor sustainability body for the Family Bank Group.
Learn in a Minute, brought to you by Nivea Lumina 630 Anti-Dark Mark Serum.
Dark marks on my face? What causes them? Yet I've tried everything. Hello, my name is Emma and this is Learn in a Minute. Dark marks are caused by different factors such as sun exposure, skin inflammation, for example, acne breakout, aging, or hormonal imbalance, leading to melanin imbalance and appearance of dark marks on the face. Let's start with dark marks from hormonal imbalance. It mostly affects us ladies and can be in the form of hyperpigmentation during pregnancy, where a lady's skin complexion completely changes. But panic not. Solution iko. You need a serum that regulates this hyperpigmentation and also prevents any reappearance. I'm thinking Nivea Lumina 630 Anti-Dark Marks. It starts working from day 1 with visible results in just 2 weeks. My name is Emma and this is Learn in a Minute.
Learn in a Minute, brought to you by Nivea Lumina 630 Anti-Dark Mark Serum.
Nivea Lumina 630 works from day 1 with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
Big things zimekam in small packages. Kwa hivyo usiwatch tu, shika inayokufaa. Bring it to life like YouTube Shorts with Safaricom. Kuwa ndani ya game, piga hiyo story. Shorter is now better na YouTube Shorts. Njia mpya ya kuenjoy music, comedy, sport, trends and more in short. Gandia trend. Imba ngoma yako. Shorter is better when you are go-getter and you look too cool. You don't need no sweater. Bampika na shorts kila siku. Check stories za kila kitu. Shika 1 GB na 10 ball. Dial *544#. Now you can watch and create YouTube Shorts videos on Kenya's fastest and most reliable network.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
I'm sorry. You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and 2 guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with a morning fix.
There's something I need you to do. I want you to drive this car somewhere far away, out of town. Then leave it there.
Well, since you'll be doing a DNA test anyway, I highly suggest you ask Gabriel Villoria to undergo one.
But sir, Gabriel's not a suspect.
Well, we discovered something here. He was with my mom during the night she had an accident. We're still convincing the hotel employee to recount his statement to the police, but in the meantime, isn't that really enough to consider Gabriel Villoria as a suspect?
Forever, my love. Did you know you can open a family bank account without having to visit a branch? Simply download PesaPap app from Google Play Store or Apple Store to enjoy freedom and convenience. All you need is your ID card, KRA PIN, and camera phone.
We know your flavor. And that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos. Bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV. Now, on Saturday, the last batch of the Kenyan troops heading into the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. We had the first batch going there on Saturday, and the second batch and the last batch is also expected to leave within this week. This is part of a 6-month peacekeeping mission under the East African Regional Force umbrella. Kenya will be leading that mission, headquartered in Goma in the DRC. Now, Prof, I know I held you to a point that you really needed to make. I'll give you an opportunity to continue.
Thank you, Zainab. There is no military solution to the problem of Eastern DRC. There has to be a rigorous and a complex diplomatic, systematic effort in order to massage people's ego, long-term interest, well-established conflict that involve the populace, the population of the area. They are part and parcel of the conflict. You have to deal with the long-standing conflict between Uganda and Rwanda and make them comfortable to be part of this ongoing thing. Burundi has direct interest in their national, their interest in supporting the economy. How do we change that? So there's got to be a force, a very strong diplomatic complex force, which complement the military peace-building effort in order to get to the bottom of what is going on. So UN need to be directly involved. AU need to be directly involved. And other countries like the US who are talking about democratic element and development in the future. And I think President Biden is coming out of the midterm election with a very powerful force and goodwill in order to join and support UN effort and AU effort. The most important thing that everyone ought to understand is the East Africa community is coming together. It is a long, grueling process before we get to where we need to be. But the ducks are stacking around common denominators, common issues. So the small standby force we have created need to be meaningful. There need to be injection of resources, not only militarily, but the peace building, the healthcare issues, mental issues that need to be directed.
And the humanitarian issue as well. When we're talking about what, more than 5.5 million people already displaced, just 70,000 alone this year. This is according to the United Nations.
Correct. So these people live in the bush with no place, and their children, as you can see them displayed in front of us, they don't go to school, there's no school, there's no structure, there are no roads. All that has to be taken care of, and Congolese resources has to be effectively utilized here. And then Congo, DRC Congo, need to have authority in the area. They need to have a structure. They need to have a sense of control in the area. And that can only come when everyone is supporting the center of interest of DRC Congo, so that they can have a governance. They can have a governance that can work here. The force that were disappointed, the promise that were made, had to be fulfilled, so that there is a track record of international effort and also reintegration of these forces who have been here for a long time.
Right.
And then there is an element which we have not talked a lot about, and that is the international force. International force and international interest, an element that can only come, be sort of shoved off if the East Africa community are serious, AU is serious and they say, this is our internal affairs. You can only be invited to help us.
Okay.
That is the potential approach and the long-term sustainable solution.
Right.
Which we're looking at.
And Dr. Momo, I mean, when we're looking at that approach and this being an African problem that Africans must solve by themselves,
exactly,
there is the elephant in the room that I feel like a lot of people are sort of skirting around, which is the issue of, you know, and I'm sorry to go back there, is the fact that Congo continues to accuse Rwanda of, you know, of course, Rwanda says this. They have completely denied this, but they're saying they're the ones who are arming and helping the M23 to make the situation worse in Congo. I mean, if we're having this conflict in that sense, how are we able to then come together to deal with the situation holistically?
That's right. Zainab, it's a critical facet of domain of statecraft, how to talk to these countries, and as professionals and practitioners, we try to be very diplomatic and careful what we say.
Right.
What I know is that all these countries have interests, and these interests are about the supreme interest, the survival, the national interests. There are those that are very important, the security and survival of their people, their territorial integrity, then, you know, other important and vital interests, and of course those that are peripheral interests. So one thing is to ensure that first we kill the antagonism, we dissolve it. And one way to do it is to ensure that everyone's complaints or concerns are brought on the table. The most important actor here is DRC itself and the people of DRC. There's a big population there, a very populous country surrounded by all these other, you know, with big, long, you know, long borders and porous. There's Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, DRC, you know, what do you call, Central African Republic, South Sudan. All these countries have a piece of the border with DRC. It's a massive land.
Right.
And right from independence in 1960, as I was telling you, there are very few governments. I mean, there were only two governments anyway. It's only at some point where that one of President Mobutu had managed to have some kind of control to some degree. And when that collapse came about and there was a vacuum,
right,
you know, all these factors happened. So it's not enough to blame Rwanda,
right,
and it's not even prudent at this point in time. We want first a buy-in of Rwanda, Burundi, and all these countries is very necessary, must come in.
Right.
It is not sufficient, but it's necessary.
Right.
Remember, as I told you, is it necessary? Yes. May not be sufficient. What will close that sufficiency and make it good? The international community must be sincere, because there are countries there that also are competing there and they are not helping anyone. Then DRC itself. If you want to be helped, you must also help yourself. And the government of President Tshisekedi, a lot of change, a lot of goodwill. The foreign minister is called Christophe Litundura. He was actually ready. They were brought together by the president of Angola, President Lourenco, and the foreign minister of Rwanda, Vincent Biruta. They came together, and they've been accepting some of these things to work together. And President Museveni and President Kagame have been in very good talking terms lately and so on.
Right.
And we want that to continue so that we can now get hold of the Congolese actors. It's complex there.
But it's a good place to start.
Yes, it's a good place to start so that it can work.
All right, so
there's one scholar who's called Emmanuel Kant. He said, there's what we call the Kantian peace triangle. What is development, what is regional stability made of? If you can have democracy, then you let people trade amongst themselves. Trade, commerce, exchange, flow of capital, good capital, clean capital, not bad money, money laundering, but good things. a good capital, people exchange goods, they produce, and so on, trade. Then institutions to oversee that. So it was called the Kantian Peace Triangle: democracy, institutions, and trade, and commerce and exchange. If we start with those issues of low politics that are very healthy for everyone, everyone would love to trade. And all this route from Mombasa, from Dar es Salaam, from all this, from Beira in Mozambique, actually the market potential that is in DRC, in fact, Africa alone cannot exhaust it.
Right.
The Grand Inga Dam and the rapids that where the mighty Congo just empties into the ocean, if we tap that, we'll have enough power for Africa, enough electricity for Africa. We don't even need to cut down those trees. No, we keep the river, we keep the trees. If something happens to the Congo basin, the world will feel it in terms of climate change. So the international community has got to invest in peace in DRC and not to take advantage in any way of problems going on there.
Right.
And Kenya is dedicated. Former President Uhuru, President Ruto asked him to take up that work of regional diplomacy. And you know President Uhuru's charm, his warmth, and that kind of thing, and backed with the goodwill of our president, our dear President William Ruto, it's working out well for the region, and we want that to continue.
Right.
Yeah.
Prof, and even as you come in, so this is sort of interesting, maybe a good place to start, like I said, because then you have the DR Congo joining the East African community just months ago.
Yeah. It is marvelous. It is, and again, this is where we really need to give President Uhuru Kenyatta, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, credit. He was very, very instrumental in getting DRC to join the East Africa community, and the East Africa community to accept him, accept DRC Congo, to join us. Several points that I want to bring up. One is there was an agreement that did not work. Basically, agreement between DRC and with the three countries, Uganda, Burundi, and Rwanda, so that they can take demarcated area of interest and work together in order to support DRC, where DRC become the overall ruler in the area, but they work. Now, Uganda went ahead and deployed its forces. Burundi went ahead and deployed. Rwanda did not. And so Uganda then is accusing Rwanda for supporting M23.
Correct.
And that is so, it is so encouraging to see those two coming together. And unless that is done, we cannot have a solution.
So that soaring relationship is something that we're looking for, very critical. So we are winding up. Just quick words.
Yes.
Final thoughts, Dr. Momo, final thoughts, Prof, very quickly.
Yes.
Moving forward.
Yes. One thing is that let's allow our president the goodwill. We give him time to work on his promises, especially matters of peace and security. And we'll continue, helping, advising, and doing the right thing so that we get there. We continue with this whole direction of integrating our region. We would be happy at some point even to have Somalia to join the East African community, because that's a big market.
Right.
And if we appreciate our strengths and the good things we can get out of economy, out of trade, and working institutions, then our countries will do better.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Prof, very
Zainab, this is a defining moment for Kenya and the Kenyan people. Transition of power is always the most volatile area. And Africans are judged very harshly by the rest of the world. But Kenya is now proven that the previous president can transition and can continue to play a vital role. Thanks God to President William Ruto for accepting this, because it's very important for our country. Kenya is investing 4.5. Some people will ask why, because we still need education and all that.
Oh, and the other question that a lot of people are asking is,
yes,
we have all these security situations in the country.
International responsibility.
There is
very important.
So we cannot
You cannot run away from your international responsibility.
There is no development without peace and security.
Right.
Yes.
And we are securing peace and
because
security.
I've seen a lot of people saying, you're sending our soldiers outside instead of sending KDF to
this Kenya, they don't understand all this social media.
There is a direct link.
So there is a direct
Dr.
link.
Yes,
to the
and
whole
I can give a whole one-day lecture to everybody.
And I think we should do that, Prof.
Yes,
I think we should do that.
You cannot run away from your international responsibility as a country.
And I think we have to continue this conversation next week once the final batch of the soldiers have now gone to the DRC. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mumon Zhao, Security Advisor and Statescraft Expert at the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies. Thank you so much, Professor Noah Midamba, Senior Associate, Global Center for Policy and Strategy. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning to have this conversation. Looking forward to continuing that and the same on social media. I'm seeing a lot of comments. We don't have time to mention all that, but we will be continuing that conversation. Remember, the hashtag, as always, is MLiveNTV. But don't go away. Your world, as always, is coming up in the short while. And Winnie Lubembe looking very bright and shiny, sunny on a Monday morning.
I know, it is very dull outside. It's very cold. So I thought, you know what, why not bring some little bit of sunshine into the studio? But it's so good to see you this morning.
Indeed,
thank you. Thank you so much.
What do you have for us today?
So today we'll be talking about diabetes, because today is actually World Diabetes Day. Yes, and according to the World Health Organization, more than 24 million people, and this is in the African continent, are actually living with diabetes. And last year we lost 416,000 people to diabetes. So it's a very, very...
Within a span of 1 year?
Within a span of 1 year, yes.
So that's a
very big
Is this what
number.
they call the silent killer?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're predicting by 2045, diabetes will be one of the conditions that actually is the leading cause of death in the non-communicable diseases arena.
It's a fantastic
Yes.
topic, and very looking forward to hearing that conversation.
Yes.
Thank you, Winnie.
Yeah.
And this is where we end M Live. Your world is coming up shortly in a moment. Stay with us. My name is Zainab Ismail. Have yourself a fantastic day, good morning, and great weekend.